Manus flat on the canvas. We are ready to rock and roll. Second round of action. There is a cut on Manus.
Yeah. Jesus.
Martial arts chat.
My man B-Hop, who got dropped out the ring last night. I need a little judo baby. I need me a little judo baby, and let's do it, Ron. Let's give me up.
See what tell me that you've got a face for radio.
That's got a face for radio.
That's nice.
Martial arts chat.
Martial arts chat.
Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Chat podcast. On today's episode, we're looking ahead to Valor's Bare Knuckle boxing event, and we'll be speaking with all the big fighters from that card and promoter Ken Shamrock. Before we start the chat, just a quick shout out to our sponsors, A1 Fight Gear. A1 Fight Gear use the latest cutting edge boxing gloves for professional and amateur fighters, gym enthusiasts and kickboxers. Local and national gyms in the UK, do yourselves a favour, check out a1fightgear.com. If you want to get into shape, get back into shape, then go to beastgear.co.uk. Use the coupon code MartialArtsChat to save 15% off your purchases for core sliders, straps, barbell pads, complete strength and conditioning programs to suit your needs at all levels. We're also sponsored by Feel Supreme. FeelSupreme.co.uk offers CBD oil and natural nutrition. They will assist your progress in diet and lifestyle, natural supplements and complementary services such as yoga, mind coaching and weight cutting programs. We're also sponsored by World of Martial Arts Television. Woma.tv produces, finds, acquires, commissions and presents all you ever wanted to know about martial arts.
Hi, my name's Chris Allen and this is the Martial Arts Chat podcast. Today I'm being joined by one of the pioneers of the mixed martial arts world. He is the UFC Hall of Famer, Ken Shamrock. Ken, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
I tell you what, Ken, I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you. As every MMA fan out there may as well say, you've heard it a million times. You're one of the first people we saw compete in the sport, so thank you for giving up your time for everyone to listen to what you've got to say.
Cool, man. I'm very excited about our upcoming event with Valor.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, I know that's obviously one of our main talking points. Let's jump straight into that for it then. So, first of all, what initially gave you the idea to start a Bare Knuckle? Let's first of all, just generally an organisation.
Well, I remember back in the day when I first started out fighting, it was Bare Knuckle, no holds barred, and I fell in love with it. I mean, it was just so pure, and it just being able to see two guys go in there and actually fight, man, and there were no rules. It was Bare Knuckle, and my adrenaline was through the roof. It was like nothing that you could ever replace, and I just fell in love with that. And so competing in it was really, almost a dream. With the excitement and the way that he went in to fight somebody, it was so pure. And then all of a sudden, this guy Tank Gabbett comes in and puts on these 4-ounce gloves and starts knocking people out.
Yeah.
And the organization said, "Hey, what a great idea! We'll be able to put gloves on guys, and they'll be able to come back and fight the same night. You know, if they win." And they knock somebody out, we don't got to worry about replacing them with an alternate because they bruised their hand or they fractured their hand or they did something to their hand, and they can come back and fight that same night or a month later. So I just thought that in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, that made sense until I actually put the glove on and I started fighting with the glove. And then I got it. I was like, this has nothing to do with making it safe for the fighters. It has to do with making it safe for the guys that are winning. Because when I put that glove on, man, I could hit guys everywhere in the head. I mean, just literally start drilling guys, not have to be very accurate, just start throwing bombs. And then I wouldn't hurt my hand, so I could actually come back and fight in an hour or a half hour. And so I realized at that time I didn't like it because I felt like it took away the purity of being tough. It took away the purity of man against man. Yeah. Whereas you didn't need equipment to make people tough. You had to be tough. You had to be a tough individual without being able to put something on you to make you tougher. And so for me, I didn't like it. And I always said to myself, if I had the opportunity to change that, I would.
And now, obviously, you've got the opportunity to do it. Now you've seen, obviously, other organisations are getting bigger and it's becoming a lot more watched, a lot more appreciated. Is that what initially gave you the idea to push forward with Valor and, start now opposed to a time before?
Yeah, I've always in my mind said that I wanted to make sure I got back to to bringing that bare knuckle back, because I always felt like that was pure, that was a rush. And even in the beginning, I always remembered people screaming, "Stand them up, stand them up." And so I just felt like, when I started seeing the direction of the social media sites where there was these street fights happening and getting a million views, and then all of a sudden these different other promotions were popping up, bare knuckle promotions were popping up over in England, also here, and they were actually generating more viewerships than the actually MMA world was. And I said, you know what? It's time.
Yeah.
It's time to throw our hat over the fence. It's time for us to get involved, and it's time for us to put on an organization, and not just a bare knuckle organization, but Valor Bare Knuckle, which in our perspective is about being very, very professionally run, with great athletes in the ring, guys that belong there, guys that are tough and guys that have honor, and be able to bring it from that dark to the light. I remember in the earlier days when UFC first came out and that no holds barred bare knuckle, it was kind of like that underground feeling. It was a spectacle, which there's nothing wrong with that. But sooner or later, you've got to bring it from that spectacle into that respected combat sport. And I felt like in those earlier days, which I was a part of being that spokesperson during that time, was trying to educate people on what it is they were watching and the understanding of what it was, so that we could go ahead and rise above the spectacle and become professional combat sport. And so I think that's where we're at right now with the bare knuckle, is that it's at that stage of a spectacle where people want to watch it, but we've got to bring some professionalism to it, some respectable rules in combat to it, so that we're able to launch ourselves into that category of being a respectable combat league. So therefore, we put Valor together to do that, and we have a very well professional team from the top to the bottom. We've got the best fighters, I think, that we could have in a tournament. We went back to old school where we thought we'd crown our champion in that tournament-style type heavyweight tournament. So, like I said, it was something that we had really thought about. We really wanted to make sure that if we were getting into the bare knuckle, that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just something we would throw together and that it would be just an event. We wanted to bring it to that respectable level, from the dark to the light.
And do you feel like you've going with the name Valor, seeing as all the other organisations are all got the name Bare Knuckle actually in their title? Do you feel the name Valor, like you said, as well as being showing the honour and respect of it all, do you really feel that's going to help you stand out as well with the name?
Yeah, I think that it's just no different than anything other sport. I mean, you have the actual event, which is obviously bare knuckle, but then at the same time, you've also got to brand your league. You can't just say, "Hey, we're bare knuckle fighting," because that's just not a name. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I felt like we had to have a name that was going to match what we were doing, that would bring some professionalism, some respect to it, and I thought Valor was a great name.
No, and I think so as well. It really stands out, and I love the design you've done with the logo for the company and everything like that. And obviously, Ken, I'm not trying to blow your own trumpet here, but having a name such as yourself, behind the organisation, how's it been? You haven't even had your first event, and how much interest are you get having being shown already? Because over in the UK, we're talking about it already.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because I think it has to do with the team members we have and the connections that we all have gained over the 80 years of experience that we have combined in our team. There's a lot of connections there, and so therefore, when we decided to launch and start doing the press releases and being able to show the fighters that we have and be able to have the connections to the different people when it comes to the direct TV, Dish Network, all major cable companies, and then of course for digital, we got Fight TV. So being able to have all those that much experience on our team, we would be able to reach out and get a lot of attention because of all the connections we have within our team. So I really believe that that's a team effort. We've all had our part in making Valor as popular as it is up to this date without even putting on a fight.
I know. It's absolutely crazy, and obviously in the UK we're talking about it, and we've obviously some our guys going over there. We've got Mark Godbeer, the champion of BK, the UK organisation. We've got James McSweeney, legendary. He was in the UFC and in the Ultimate Fighter and things as well. So it's great to see that we've got some of our guys going over there to try and make a name for themselves again.
Yeah, that was important too. We want to make sure that we have countries represented because bare knuckle is a universal combat. So it was important for us to be able to showcase just people from different countries, but at the same time, different styles, like for MMA, boxing, kickboxing. So we just felt like it's an interesting concept when you look at it, at least for me, and I hope it is for everyone else. But it almost goes back to the earlier days of the UFC when especially when I fought in it. It was bare knuckle, no rules, but you literally had style against style.
Yeah.
Well, this has almost got that same kind of thing to it because you've got especially in our co-main event, we got a former world champion pro boxer in Ishii Smith and Estevan Payan, who has got a pretty good MMA resume. So when you look at that matchup, you've got really a boxer against an MMA guy.
Yeah.
Which one is going to transition into bare knuckle? A lot of people say, well, I think it's going to be the boxer. Well, you got to remember this. Fighting is about being able to not get hit. When you think about boxing is a sport in which sometimes guys get hit and they just shake it off or they brush it off or they'll slip it.
Yeah.
You can't do that in bare knuckle. You can't take a jab in bare knuckle and then throw a combination after you take a jab. It's just not going to happen like that because those jabs count a lot more than they do in boxing. So having those big, 8-ounce or 12-ounce gloves that you have on when you're boxing and you're able to slap punches away or be able to, do the peekaboo with them and not have to move your feet as much when you get tired. Well, you can't do that in bare knuckle. So it's interesting to see whether or not MMA translates into bare knuckle or boxing translates into bare knuckle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun to watch, like I said, because it's so new. You got guys that have 27-4 or 30-3 or whatever, some crazy records in boxing and MMA, right?
Yep.
But when they walk into our event and they get up on that screen and they put their record up there, it's going to be 0-0, or unless you're Mark Garber, it'll be 2-0, right? But it's so young. It's like the early UFCs when guys were stepping in there. They were 0-0 or they were 2-1 or they were 3-0. It is crazy to see this happen over again with as much experience and as far as we've been when it comes to combat sports, to now be back at 0-0 again, starting something that I believe is just its own beast.
Yeah. And it must be an amazing feeling for yourself because you were there the early days of, as you said, your bare knuckle fighting and the early days of the UFC, and now you're starting your journey again, but being a promoter now of another great organisation. And like you said, it's like the old days. Instead of karate against a wrestler, now we've got the MMA guy versus the boxer bare knuckle. And what people don't understand is with bare knuckle, like you explained, is you can't just throw anything, because with bare knuckle you have to be so pinpoint accurate, otherwise you're going to break bones, right?
That's exactly right. Or even if a guy like Ishii Smith, who's used to being able to do the peekaboo and the glove slips in and it just touches him, it's no big deal, right? They just do the peekaboo. Yeah. Guys throw body shots and they kind of sit there and they counter them. Well, in boxing, man, that's okay. But in bare knuckle, man, you can't allow them to touch you because the hands are more effective instantly than they are in boxing, because it can cause a cut or it can cause a bruise, or you can actually break someone's jaw or break someone's nose or cut them over the eye. And these are all things that people look at instantly as being more dangerous. And to me, it's funny, or not funny, but it's confusing to me, I guess I would put it, is that showing people that get cuts or broken noses or even broken jaws, and all of a sudden people go, man, somebody's going to get killed in this sport. It's just so confusing to me that people look at that and all of a sudden they make that judgment. And the reality of it is this: he took 10 shots and he went down, or he got cut, or he got his jaw broken.
Yeah.
He didn't take 100 shots before he fell to the mat and got back up and withstood the punishment and then died. So this is a much different sport and event that people have to understand and be educated on what's happening. So I'm really excited, and it is our responsibility as promoters to be able to educate the fans on what they're watching so that they have a better understanding of what it is, so that they don't freak out when something like that happens. They really understand, oh, okay, well, it's a broken jaw, it'll heal, or it's a cut, it'll heal. There's a lot of blood, but it'll heal, as opposed to 10 years down the road, boxing or MMA, where you're taking 100 to 200 shots per fight, and then 10 years down the road, you can't remember who your kids are. So to me, I think the instant damage and stuff like that, that heals, which is the scar tissue in the bones, I would much rather, as a fighter, have to deal with rather than deal with brain damage.
No, it's true. And what I find is really interesting, if you see the sort of timeline of events since the first UFCs, you know, everyone was boycotting UFC. It was banned in 49 states when you were competing in it still, you know, and you know, everyone was like, oh, it's a blood sport, it's just street fighting, blah blah blah. Now look how well accepted the sport is. You know, MMA as a whole, people are starting putting their kids in it from an early age now. You know, back in the day, many people wouldn't think that, would they?
No, and that's where we're at right now with Bare Knuckle.
Exactly.
Is that when it happens in the ring, their first statement is going to be, see, I told you somebody's going to get hurt. Well, let me tell you something to all those people that say those things. It is a combat sport, and it will have some sort of accidents or people that happen to get hurt. It is a combat sport. It's like football and anything else you go into. There is a risk. But you minimize your risks. As a fighter or as a person getting in there, you look to see which ones that you look at and go, okay, which one minimizes my risk for the most damage? And me personally as a fighter, and I've done it all, I would much rather have a career in bare knuckle than I ever would with a 4-ounce glove on or a boxing glove on.
No, that's fair enough. And we know you're not someone to we know you're not someone who likes to stop fighting and competing. You know, you're only competing a few years ago. You thought about doing it yourself again, Ken, or are you done with that now, the combat game?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm president of Valor. Okay, all that means is that I'm the least valuable person when it comes to the knowledge of how everything works. I'm the one that is they put in front and does all the talking, and they tell me what to say, and you know, and so I'm the character, but. Yeah, the guys behind me, you know, we've got a great team behind us. And I'll tell you what, they're the ones that mastermind of putting the show on, getting the pieces put together. Like I said, you know, we have gotten DirecTV, Dish Network, all the major cable companies. And then, of course, digital was Fight TV. Man, the connections that we have on our team is second to none. And that's the reason why we are where we are right now to this day. Everybody on our team has something to offer to make us better.
Yeah, mate, and they're definitely doing the right things because, as you said, you haven't even had one event yet. Everyone's already talking about it, you know, and we're all looking forward to it. And especially, as I said, in the UK, we can't wait to see our UK guys in there as well. You know, we're really going to be supporting them, and definitely can't wait. So, as you were talking about educating people about the bare knuckle world, for people who don't know about it as much yet, they've just seen the clips on YouTube or whatever. Can you explain the rules of it? So, the rules of bare knuckle boxing compared to boxing, standard stand-up boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I can tell you
basics.
Yeah, ours will be this. There will be no tape on the hands, only on the wrist. I know a lot of these other organizations allow them to tape the thumb and up the hand. I feel that that's not fair. I want God-given talent. I want guys to go in there and fight with their God-given ability. And I don't want any tape or anything in there that's going to make them better. You fight with what you got. If your hands are brittle, why are you in bare knuckle? You can't say you're a bare knuckle fighter if you can't fight with bare knuckle. To me, that's the crazy part when I look at guys that saying they fight bare knuckle and they're not fighting bare knuckle. They've got tape on their hands, and to me, that's not the same. So we want to make sure that these guys go in there and they fight, and we get the toughest guys with the God-given talent that go in there and can say, "Hey, I am the bare knuckle champion," and they are, and because of how they're fighting and the way they're fighting, they are. So we got 3-minute rounds. You know, we're not going to let them grab or hold or hold on to the head or to grab anybody. When you're in a clinch, man, you better not be holding on or you're going to be warned. So we want guys to be able to fight. We don't want them to hold on to them like they did in boxing where they grab a head or they grab them, try to push them off and all that other stuff. If you're in a clinch, man, you keep your hands closed. And then you can bump them with shoulders or whatever, do that, but do not grab them. Because then that causes fingers to end up in people's eyes. And so your hands got to stay closed. And so that's what we want. We want to be able to make sure that people get to go in and watch a fight. When we say it's bare knuckle, we want it to be bare knuckle.
And that's what it should be. And you're right, there is a lot of different companies, taping up and things like that. And what was your main issue with the guys obviously wearing tape? Is it just because you want them to use their God-given talent, or do you feel it just doesn't? It gives maybe a slightly unfair advantage. What do you feel on that?
Yeah, I think it gives them support. And to me, we're talking about bare knuckle. If it was boxing, okay. If it was MMA, okay. But we're saying this is bare knuckle. And so people want to go, oh yeah, okay, well, just the knuckles are just exposed and it's bare knuckle. That's not fair. That's not true. Bare knuckle is about fighting with your bare hand. You don't get to put something on your hand to make it have more support so you don't hurt your hand. If you can't do it that way, then you're not a bare knuckle fighter.
Yep, that's it. And so it's interesting. So it's actually quite different from the other organisations we've seen. You're not going to allow the clinch. I think in the other organisations you can hold behind the head and land strikes at the same time, maybe a few. But as I said, you want to see it as pure stand-up boxing. And is it going to be knockdown 10 count and things like that?
Yeah, that's stuff that you'd have to get with our rules. I'm pretty sure it is, but all the details on that is stuff that I don't get into.
Okay.
But there won't be holding. There's no holding and rabbit punching. And man, if you're there, it's just bare knuckle fighting. So fight. Don't be holding on or grabbing someone's head to try to punch them. Use your hands. That's what they're used for, is to punch. So don't hold on.
It's fair enough. And what I love about your passion for bare knuckle boxing as well is, Ken, obviously because you're very obviously out from the old school days of the bare knuckle style. But if you actually, when people look at your MMA career, they might think he loves his bare knuckle fighting, but God, he knows how to tap blokes out as well, doesn't he?
But if you knew me before I started into my MMA career and the no hold barred career, I was known as One Punch Shamrock, and I fought in tough mans, 3 different tough mans. Of course, I wore gloves, but I knocked everybody out. I also fought in street fights where I was making money fighting outside of bars, and that was basic bare knuckle, called it squatting. And so I would fight guys and I'd make money, and so I was always known as One Punch Shamrock, and before I got into the MMA world. So that's where my roots came from early on, and people don't know that because when I got into the no holds barred, just like when I'm talking about analyzing what I would want to get into if I had a choice of the 3, boxing, MMA, or bare knuckle, I analyzed it and looked and said, you know what? My career in being in that more safe environment, I would be bare knuckle. I believe I would have a much safer and a better career in bare knuckle just because of what it is. And I did the same thing early on, when I was fighting and all that. I did the same thing early on when I was squatting and fighting out there. I made a choice on what I wanted to do early on, and I felt like it was so much safer than when I put a glove on. It was unbelievable being able to strike and hit people from wherever I wanted to hit them, and I wouldn't hurt my hand, as opposed to how accurate you had to be with the experience that I had in bare knuckle. It took away the actual professionalism of guys that really knew how to strike.
Well, and what's if you don't mind me asking, Ken, what sort of age were you at this time you started this sort of competing?
Oh, I was what, 24?
Okay.
24? Yeah, 24, 25.
Yeah, were you doing any sort of discipline before that at all? Any sort of combat sport, any sort of training, and anything else?
Well, what I did was boxing, and I did a little kickboxing, and I wrestled. I was a really good wrestler, so I had the understanding of being able to grapple, not the submission stuff, but I knew cross spaces and, chokes and things like that, but not to the level I did when I got into the submissions. But, when I first got into actual no holds barred early on, I analyzed. I knew how to strike bare knuckle. That's what I did first.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I said, man, being able to take a guy to the ground, there's no lucky punch. You're not going to get a lucky submission. So I weighed the odds of okay, which one is better for me to be able to do something without somebody getting lucky or taking the most damage. And I knew right away taking guys to the ground because I could shoot, and learning the submissions so I could submit them. So I learned that right away and understood right away that my chances of succeeding were a lot higher than me standing up and banging with somebody, because anybody can get a lucky punch and you go down, but you can't get lucky on a submission. So that's why I end up going into that submission direction rather than the striking direction, because I weighed out the odds on what would be safer for me.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? And it's interesting to hear you say that back then. Like you actually looked at it, because it sounds like when you talk about all these different sports, you always seem to look at what dangers is it going to give me and what effect is it going to have me long term. You know, and it's obviously a very good way to look at things.
Yeah, and also too, how I look at being able to be successful. If there is an opportunity for me to take someone to the ground and submit them, and it's bare knuckle, then I'm going to take them to the ground, because I realize the damage you would take being able to stand toe to toe with somebody, as opposed to grabbing and taking the ground and submitting them, right?
Yeah.
So, but we can't do that today, right? I mean, bare knuckle, there's none of that, right? You're either wearing 4-ounce gloves in MMA, or you're not going to do bare knuckle. So now we're starting bare knuckle and stand up. To me, it's a much safer. In the MMA world that you look at right now, with those 4-ounce gloves on and guys trying to take you down, with a 4-ounce glove on, you're able to hit them in the head any way you want, is much more dangerous than being able to stand toe to toe with somebody and fighting with a no gloves on and being able to fight bare knuckle. You're taking less damage. So to me, that's just a no-brainer. And I've always analyzed everything as I've always gone through my career, trying to figure out which ones I would be more successful at in whatever fight it was, and what the best direction to go to win those fights and take the less damage. So to me right now, looking at the way MMA is today, looking at the way boxing is, and looking at bare knuckle, in my mind, and I've done it all, you are much, much more safer going into bare knuckle than you are any of those other events.
Hence why you've started up a bare knuckle organisation and not an MMA one, correct?
Exactly.
That's it, mate. And do you really think that mentality you've had going through, and that being able to analyse and your success and everything, do you believe that's how you had such a lengthy career? You managed to go on for such a long time in your career? I
do. I think that I understood how to be aggressive and how to go after people, but how to not take as much damage.
No, that's it. And you were fantastic. You had fantastic takedowns, you know. And where was it? Obviously, if people don't know, where and when did you then learn to adapt your submission game from just the basic wrestling submission to full-on submissions?
Yeah, I went over to Japan with Masakatsu Funaki. He really taught me a lot. But Fujiwara helped me a little bit too. And then Carl Gotts had come in and worked with us a little bit. But Sammy's the one that actually found me. Dean Malenko, who was they were training at Dean Malenko's dad's gym. He brought me in, and I did a tryout. And after I did the tryout, Sammy liked me and then brought me to Japan. And after that, I never looked back.
Oh, that's it, mate. So when was that? So because you were doing because Dean Malenko, wasn't he involved in WWF as well? Am I thinking the right thing?
Yeah. Dean had done a little bit of that shoot style, but just wasn't something that he really enjoyed. But he turned me on to it, and I went and tried out. Next thing I was over in Japan, and I was fighting over there. And so I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the style. I enjoyed the contact. And so that's why I succeeded at it, is because I really did enjoy it.
So was that when you were fighting in Pride and Pancras? Was Pancras in Japan? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was before Pride. Pride hadn't come out yet when I first started over there. When we had first started our first couple of shows, UFC wasn't even around yet. So it started in '89 and '90.
Okay, because I know it was I knew in the records in MMA obviously you've been fighting since 1993. But it's interesting to learn that, you know, you've been watching someone your whole life, and I've learned something myself. So
right?
a long career, as I was saying, even longer than I thought initially.
Yeah, I had a long one.
Well, for me, Ken, I'm not trying to be a fanboy, but I've watched you from, you know, when I was younger. When I was younger, I remember watching you in WWF, you know, putting ankle locks on, the world's most dangerous man, you know. And then as I got older, started watching UFC, watching the originals of UFC and things like that. You know, it's just so interesting to now see how you've gone forward now to start your own organisation, which is Bare Knuckle, and you've done it all from all your experiences. Say all those experiences of WWF to Bare Knuckle to fighting in Japan to fighting in UFC. As all those experiences just led to this moment, like pushed you to do what you're doing now.
Yes, it does, and like I said, I fell in love with it early on, and just didn't feel right that they had taken away the purity of that no holds barred sport, that bare knuckle, And that was real. And that's what people really fell in love with when we first came out, was that there was no gloves. And people fell in love with that. And then, of course, the clubs came on and they actually made them smaller. And then, you know, it was just basically force-fed to everybody that, hey, these were safer. And the reality is it wasn't true. But it turned into a $4 billion business. So, you know, they did something right. But it wasn't the way they sold it. I promise you. It wasn't because it was safer. It was because they just knew that the guys that were winning needed to come back and fight again, because that's what people wanted to see, were the guys winning.
That's it. And I say it's great. And I said it's really good to see him back. And how do you feel as well, though? You know, even looking back now at your UFC career, you're still one of the original Hall of Famers. Is that still something you're really proud of?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I know you hear me talk about Bare Knuckle and my love for it, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy my MMA career.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I did. It just wasn't. It just didn't have the same effect on me that the Bare Knuckle did. But nevertheless, I still enjoyed it, and I still had a great career, and I enjoyed it all the way. So, you know, I just want to make people understand that. But it wasn't the same. I didn't have the same effect on me as Bare Knuckle did, where it was just felt more pure and more real.
That's fair. And you know, you're actually mirroring, it's actually quite similar. I was talking to James McSweeney the other day on chatting to him, and he said quite a very similar thing. You know, he says, like, Bare Knuckle, you know, I'm undefeated in my own eyes, you know, but in the MMA world, it was slightly different, and really felt at home in the Bare Knuckle world. And that must come down to, said, having to actually really rely on those precision strikes, you know, because if you can just throw like anything, it's a whole different ball game, especially with kicks and takedowns and things like that. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the first event goes. I'm sure it's going to go really well. You're getting loads of views already and it hasn't even started. So that's always a good thing. But going back to the organisation, did you have before you started it, did you have an idea of who you wanted to join your organisation, like fighter-wise?
I didn't know. I knew the kind of fighter I wanted. I wanted guys that had some courage, some guys that were respectable, but guys that had no quit in them. Like they were here to fight, and they weren't going to complain. You know that this is Bare Knuckle, man, and it's just two guys get in there and you fight it out. And you know, when it's over, you can be upset. Nobody likes to lose, but you hold your head high and you take it like a man and you move on. So there, like I said, there were characters that we went after. We wanted guys that didn't cut easy. We wanted guys that we knew that would come out and fight again, that had backgrounds of guys that showed up to fight. They didn't miss a lot of fights or miss a lot of opportunities to fight because whatever down the road, they end up not fighting. So we got guys in here that we know that are going to fight, and they're going to put on a good show. We got Mark Godbeer versus Jack May. I love that one because those guys have hands. We got Mighty Mo versus Romero Sokaju. Those guys, man, we know what they can do. I mean, they've got a tremendous background in the MMA world, so that's going to be a fun one. But hey, the one that I always look at that just might be sneaky, man, is that James McSweeney. He gets bright. Those guys are sneaky, man. And they could, if one of these guys actually break a hand or does something like that because they get too wild, man, he could slide in there and he could win this thing. So it's fun to watch. I think the two guys here that I look at, I mean, I think Mighty Mo and Romero Sokaju are really good. Jack May is also good, but does the guys that actually have bare knuckle experience, do they have the advantage here? See, that's in my mind what I'm thinking, because I know the difference between bare knuckle and 4-ounce gloves and 12-ounce gloves. It's huge. It's a whole different world. So if these guys have actually two guys got some experience in this, being from England, do they have the advantage?
That's it. And I don't want to answer that question right now because I had a chat with James McSweeney on interview, so I'll let them all hear the answer because he can give you a bit of a background on what he's been doing. So I'm feeling quite positive that McSweeney's going to do quite well, but that's not me just being biased. I'd like to see what happens. There is a lot of backyard stuff in the UK as well, which isn't, I know it's not official, and it's, you know what I mean, but it's not, it's just recorded and things like that. But we have had the UK organisation, so there obviously is, in the UK, there obviously is a large following of it, and a lot of people are interested in it. So yeah, I'm just as interested as you, Ken. You know, are we going to have the more experienced guys from here, or is it going to be the guys in the States or from that part of the world? that must make it like much more interesting. Just like the first day of UFC, is that guy going to beat that discipline, etc., etc. It's almost country versus country and style versus style. Would you say?
I love it. Yeah, to me that's exciting because, I talked about my co-main event too, Izzy Smith and Estevan Payan. I mean, you got MMA against boxing. I mean, that's always been like a rivalry with boxing and MMA. They're always saying, well, we could beat you guys if you didn't take us down. So, but maybe in boxing, right? Yeah, okay, I get it. That's what you do. But how about if we change the game up for both of you? Like for MMA and the boxing. How about we do it with no gloves? And now you guys are both 0-0, and let's see which one of these transitions into bare knuckle.
And yeah, it's just going to be so interesting to find out. It's literally like myself being able to live through like watching the days of the original UFC days, but we're seeing it in the bare knuckle world, and I'm really glad I get to be a part of it and like get to enjoy it as well, Ken. So obviously thank you very much for putting that on. But we have seen, I don't want to talk about other organisations too much, but we have seen obviously a boxer face an MMA guy, Paulie Malignaggi, and
right.
look, that didn't quite work out. He tried to box him, it doesn't work in bare knuckle. So that was quite a prime example, would you say?
Yeah, because I think boxers go in there and they got the bigger gloves to try to defend a little bit, so they don't have to use their footwork as much. But in bare knuckle, it's a lot faster. You have to use your footwork, and every punch counts. So not like in boxing where you could take a couple rounds to get warmed up. Man, by that time the fight's over in bare knuckle. So it's fast. It's really fast. So it is an adjustment, but it's also an adjustment for any combat sport because bare knuckle is its own beast. So anybody that goes into this coming from whatever discipline that it is, bare knuckle is its own beast. People have to learn that this isn't the same or even close to the same of anything they've done.
I know, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so interesting to see the outcome. It's just like an experiment, almost such a thing, which has been tried and tested, but this is going to be a whole different experiment. The way you've set things up with the opponents as well, it's definitely going to be a night of fireworks, and it's going to be incredible. Did you have a lot of applicants as well for this, by the way? Did you have a lot of people applying through your website? Because I see there's an application form on there.
Yeah, it's gradually grown and it keeps growing, obviously because of the attention. Because like I said, we want to make sure that people understand who we are. We're Valor BK. We're not an organization that does bare knuckle. We're Valor BK, and we put on bare knuckle fights. And we want to make sure that we're clear on that and that we're separated from that because we want people to know that this is very well run. We've got the funding behind us. We're in it for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. And when people get done watching our event, they're going to realize that the things they've been watching in the past, it's not professional. What we're doing is at a very high level with very, very competent people involved in our organization. Like I said, we got over 80 years of experience with the team members that we have on our staff. And to be able to put together a card with all of that experience. Richard Goodman has done a great job of putting this card together, along with all the other people we have on our team to chime in on being able to help support what he's doing. So it's really been an awesome journey. I really, really love the direction we're going, and I love all the connections that we're able to pull from our team. It's just been unbelievable.
I know, it's all just fallen so nicely into place for you, and you're obviously a very well-respected man, Ken, and well rightly you should be. You've done a lot for the sport, and you obviously understand what you're talking about. You're not going out there just to see people brawl. You want people to be safe, and you want them to do it in the safest way possible, because I'm sure you've got a lot of medical team just in case, and it sounds like you've got everything set up and ready to go, Ken. So is there much more left to do, or are we pretty much done for the event?
I just want to make sure that we also get to say thank you to the fans for being able to get involved and actually match our fighters up on the first round. That's something we did with Forbes, where we actually had the fans vote on what matchups they wanted in that first round heavyweight tournament. So it was fun to watch because I had my own thoughts on it, and I know a lot of other guys did too. Richard Goodman and a few other guys, we all kind of had the same matchups that we wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
We were a little worried about letting the fans vote on it, but we said, you know what, let's trust it. I think the fans all see the same thing we see. And so the fans voted on it. And so they came up with the exact, which is the exact kind of setup that we would have done in the first place. So congratulations. We really appreciate the fans for being involved and being able to come out and vote for us and putting that first round together. It's going to be fun to watch this thing play out.
Did you actually get a final number on how many votes came through, by the way?
I think we did, but I don't have it on me.
Okay.
I should get that. That way I can actually tell people. But it was pretty good. We did well.
That's amazing. I said all this before, again, I repeat myself, before we've even had the first event. And it just shows how well your team are doing with advertising and getting the word out there. And I'm sure as hell doing the same thing as well. You know, I'll be spreading all this around the UK and want people to make sure they know what's going on. Because, Ken, you're a huge name all around the world, especially in the UK. So people are definitely going to be tuning into this. And as I said, in the UK, hopefully you get on some of the UK channels over here. But we can still watch it on Fight TV, yeah?
Yeah, we'll have it. We'll have it there. I just don't know what it is. If you guys look it up, Valor BK, it'll be in either DirecTV, Dish Networks, all the major cable companies, and then Fight for the digital. It's Fight TV. So yeah, if you look it, I'm sure it's there. And if people will look it up, it's Valor BK. We will have it in. And I'm not sure because we've hired actually an individual person to go out there and make sure that whatever network, especially in England, because we know it's big over there, that they have the network that's going to provide it for the people in England.
Yeah, no, I really hope we get the opportunity to watch it. If not, I'll definitely be streaming it on the on Fight TV, as you were saying, on the online. But either way, I'll be watching it one way or the other, and I can't wait for it. It'll be a late one though, obviously. It'll be in the UK. I'm guessing you're starting what time's your event start? I'm guessing it's around 1 a.m. in the UK.
Yeah, it's I believe it's the doors open at 6:30, and I think that our pay-per-view launches at 9, I believe.
That's fine then. That's not bad then. If we get up at 5 a.m. then we can start watching. We can watch the pay-per-view and then catch up on the prelims before. Perfect.
It starts. I'm sorry. I think it starts at 7. Doors open at 6:30. Starts at 7:30. The first pay-per-view event.
Oh mate, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible. And can I ask who's headlining the event, or the headline be obviously the tournament final?
Yeah, it's a tournament final, but the co-main event also too. I think that's one to watch, which is Izzy Smith and Estevan Payan, boxer against MMA. But yeah, it will be the heavyweight tournament. The guys that win the first round, that will be our main event. But it's a co-main event, so I think that our co-main event is going to also be very exciting.
And have you got any sort of obviously having, just make sure I'm not getting this wrong. Obviously in the tournament they'll be fighting more than once that night, correct?
They'll fight twice.
Yes, sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm getting that out there correctly. They'll be fighting twice. Have you got some sort of backup plan if there is an injury to any of these fighters, if they do win and they're injured? Is there any sort of contingency?
Yes, we got James McSweeney and Brian Heaton, which they'll fight each other. Whoever wins that will be the first alternate up.
Okay, perfect. And obviously a lot of people will be thinking that, but let's not hope that. Hope everyone comes out safe and healthy, you know, and they can continue to fight.
Yeah.
It's been a proven thing, haven't we? We've seen it in the past. It's proven it can be done. You know, how many times have you done it, Ken? Like, what's the most you fought in one night before?
Oh, 4 times.
Oh,
4 times.
Jeez.
Yeah. And it can be done. That was bare knuckle too, so it can be done if the fighter goes in and they understand that it's a controlled aggression. And that they're not there to try to knock the guy on the first round or to try to force a knockout. I think that once the guy with the mental strength knows going in how to fight, you'll get through it and he'll win. But it's the ones that panic and they start throwing those bombs and they catch the head wrong and then they've got a hurt hand and now they're fighting at a real bad disadvantage.
That is it. And sorry to go back in time when you were talking a second ago. You were talking about when you were fighting in the no holds bar before everything. What was the nickname they called you? One Punch Shamrock, wasn't it?
Yeah, One Punch Shamrock. Yep.
That's it. Yeah. See, I never knew that. When did the World's Most Dangerous Man come in? Sorry, I forgot to ask you that. Who gave you that one?
I think that came in late '93 or early '94.
Yeah. Who gave you that? Was that someone who gave it to you? Or did you just hear it?
It was done with the TV station, with the world's most dangerous animal and places and food and person.
Yeah. It's interesting though. Yeah, so it's always interesting to see where the nicknames come from. It's one of my favourite things to find out about you guys. So back in that sort of time then, so back in like the early 90s, you opened up your own gym as well, didn't you? Was it the Lion's Den, if I remember rightly?
I did, yeah. I opened it up because I couldn't find places to train at here in the States. I was always having to stay over in Japan to train.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a way to train here because I spent too much away with my family. So I ended up just starting to train guys and start teaching them so that I had guys I could train with.
No, so that's why I was actually going to ask that question next. Like, why did you decide to open your own gym and things like that? And you did produce some great guys from there as well. You know, multiple champions, Roy Nelson, you know, Maurice Smith as well. So and Frank obviously as well. So you definitely had some good fights come out of there. So is it nice to see how those guys progressed further on their career later on?
Yeah, even Guy Mesger. You know, you talk about Guy Mesger too.
Sorry,
he had a tremendous. Jerry Bolander. I mean,
sorry, I should say there's plenty more. Yeah, there is plenty more.
There's a lot of guys, man, that had done very well with the way that we had trained. It was tough, and there was no roadmap on how to train guys. So, you know, me just being the kind of the tough guy that I was, I always just thought, well, let's emulate what we're going to do in the ring, and let's just bring 3 or 4 different guys to come in fresh doing it. And that's what we did, man. And we were tough, man. Everybody in there got tough.
So, and I was just looking. I recommend people. I didn't give it enough credit. If you look online, you can easily see the list goes on of multiple champions in there in different disciplines. You know, and you know, it's fantastic to see, Ken, that people have followed so well in your footsteps. Because a lot of people probably don't know about these people who trained in your gym. You know, and it's nice for people to understand that and where you've come from and how you've led all the way to now. I'm sure a lot of people don't need telling. You know, and a lot of people know who you are. But it's really interesting to hear your story, how you got to where you are, and no, I really appreciate you, you know, letting it all out there, mate. Thanks very much.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate you. I got another interview here at 1. I got about 12 minutes.
No, that's right. So what I was going to say to you is, obviously, Ken, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honour to speak to you. So seeing as you've got another interview soon, before we leave, is there anyone you obviously haven't mentioned already that you want to say thank you to, who's helped Valor to get where it is today? And obviously let everyone know where they can watch it when and how to follow you on social networks as well.
Yeah, like I said, I get a shout out to our team. You know, we got Des Woodruff, who is my business partner. Then we've got Todd Middendorf, who is our VP of operations. We've got Richard Goodman, who is the matchmaker, has done a great job on the card. And then, of course, Jen Wink, who is the PR. She worked with UFC during the heyday and built them up. Now she's working for us. And we have a great support team around us. There's many more people that are still working. So those are the ones I think that I can mention. And can't mention everybody, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are also working real hard. So like I said, I tend to get all the credit because I'm the one talking and I'm the face. But I'm telling you right now that without the team that I had behind me and the people supporting me and working behind the scenes, we wouldn't be where we're at. So I just want to make sure to shout out to them and that we've got something special here and we can all be proud of it.
Definitely, and I really recommend everyone go out there and make sure you watch the fight and you tune in, pay for the pay-per-view. It'll be very 100% worth it. And also make sure you go online and check out Valor on all their Facebook pages and Instagram. There's a lot of good work being done by their social guy there, so a lot of information of all the fighters. Go and check it out. And Ken, just from me again, I really want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate you're a busy man. There's a lot going on in your life, so thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Hey, appreciate you. Thank you.
No worries, Ken, and look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
All right, man. Take care.
Hello, my name's Chris Allen, and this is the Martial Arts Chat podcast. Today, I'm being honoured to speak to a UK legend, even though he's been out of the country for a little while now, but we still think of him as one of our own. It's Mr. James McSweeney. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm great, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on.
No, really appreciate you coming on, and as I said, even though you don't live with us anymore, you're still one of our own. I said, I'm sure you never forget where you came from, do you?
Oh no, of course not. No matter where I am, I'm always known to be English, and my family, you know, my whole grew up in England, so my family is still there. I come over at least once a year, and even the big events when I fought for the UFC, they had me over there and fight in the O2 Arena, and then when I was with KSW, Wembley Stadium, Wembley Arena, so many times. So I'm always reminded, which is great. I never forget where I'm from. So I love to come back and fight in England and see everybody. It's always good.
Yeah, mate. Obviously, we'd love to have you back. So, you know, they say like you're playing home or away sort of thing. So do you feel like you're playing at home when you're in America or more when you're in the UK?
I think, to be honest, it's kind of different now because I've lived in America. I left England 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I was in America straight for about 5 years, and then I moved to Thailand for pretty much 5 years. I was in Australia for a year, and now I've been just come back to America again. So to be honest, I'm fighting in America, and I fought here so regularly, and America has very much embraced me and took me on as their own, which is my daughter's American, my wife is American.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of lucky. I'm home from home. When I go to England, I get a great rapport from the fans, and when I'm in America, they treat me almost exactly the same. So I'm very lucky that I'm home from home. Every time I fight in America, it's like being home, and same in England.
No, that's fair enough, because I was actually going to ask that question, which you sort of answered now, actually, to be fair. I was going to say, like, do you feel like you're always fighting on foreign ground, like getting the boos from the crowd because you're fighting the local man and stuff like that?
Well, it was different because when I fought for KSW, I fought the Polish guys.
Yeah.
And then when I fought for UFC, I fought a Brazilian, Fabio Maldonado. So I was always still the hometown hero in that respect of, and especially being an English heavyweight, they very, the English fans are like, they're very supportive and very passionate. So I've never really had, well, I can't say I've had many boos. People either love me or they hate me.
Yeah,
so
well,
I'm quite, I'm quite opinionated, and you never see fans say, "Oh, James is okay." They either think I'm fantastic or they hate my guts. So it is what it is. Fans are fans, and I appreciate both of them.
Well, yeah, and the fans obviously love your fighting style as well. Like, all your wins are by finish. You never, you know what I mean? Never a decision, and 15 wins, 9 by knockouts. That's just in your MMA career. And if we go even further back to your kickboxing career, well, it gets a bit extreme now, doesn't it? It's 46 wins with 31 finishes. So you're obviously an exciting man to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I've always tried to bring the fight and do the best I can possibly do. And I always try to think of myself, I don't hold back. I don't try to, ponder out, the points scoring. Even if it goes to a decision, it just happened because it was a tough fight. But I'm never trying to look for a points decision. As a fighter and as a fan of the sport, I always think about what I want to achieve. I'm always want to achieve the knockout, and I'd always think about what the fans are paying good money to watch. And every fan loves to see a stoppage or a knockout, right? So I'm always trying to deliver the best I possibly can.
And I said, you look through your record, you've always, as I said, all your wins are always by like savage knockout. And I bet even in ONE FC, you had a good soccer kick knockout. That must have been an extra one to add to your resume. You haven't been able to do that in many organisations. Yeah,
that was really nice because they allowed soccer kicks to a downed opponent, and I won Knockout of the Year that year for 2014 for that knockout, and also the one prior to that, I won first and second place. I knocked out Chris Loktev with a jumping knee, and I think that actually retired him. He was undefeated until that fight. It's a shame he never got to fight again. I don't know what happened to him. I think it was a bad knockout, and I think it really affected him, from what I've heard. But it's a shame because he's a really cool guy. And then when I fought Christian Kaminchi, yes, he was another undefeated Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and I soccer kicked him and knocked him out as well. So it was good to have those kind of rules set. And to be honest, that's why it's great to fight now for the rule set I'm going to fight under, because I've always performed the best. I know it sounds probably a bit weird or a bit more violent, but the least amount of rules possible has always suited my personality of fighting the best. So when I could soccer kick or kick the other downed opponent, it really was just very natural for me to do that. So it felt a lot easier.
No, that's fair enough. It is a natural reaction. You still see the professional guys in UFC and Bellator accidentally throwing kicks to a downed opponent. It's sort of like an instinct, like a fighter has, and you do see that in quite a few other fighters as well. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure, because I know in Pride, obviously, they allowed soccer kicks, okay, but they didn't allow elbows because they found elbows were dangerous. Is that the same with ONE FC?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? I don't know who comes up with this bullshit, but it's like you can soccer kick a guy that's down in the face, but you can't elbow him on the ground or knee him on the ground, but you can elbow him standing up. It's like, and then in Pride there was no elbows whatsoever, but you could knee the guy you could be in north-south position on the ground and knee him clean in the head. You could knee him in the crown of the head from north-south position of a downed opponent, but you couldn't elbow. I mean, I kind of understood it to the point because they didn't want people to get cut so much and the fights be stopped. Yeah. But I mean, a knee to the top of the head from north-south position is way more damaging to the spine and the brain than an elbow to the face, which is just superficial cuts. So there's some very, very different rule sets. But I think ONE FC have just, I'm not too sure, I could be wrong, but from what I heard, they've just taken out soccer kicks now. They've stopped soccer kicks, from what I've heard.
Well, yeah, because I said in the recent fights, with some of the UFC guys going over there watching a few more of the fights, you're not seeing as much of it, and I say you're not really seeing it anymore from the guys. So you might be right; it might be stopped, but it's definitely something we should look at. But maybe it's a good thing, if they're going to stop that, it maybe help promote the sport more. And maybe they're doing it so they can bring the sport to different, like over here, because over here they won't allow it.
Yeah, that's what it is. I think because in the Asian network, it's no problem whatsoever because they're used to it from Pride and China and stuff like that. But I think they are looking to. They're now bringing in so many Americans into ONE FC. Like I say he's not American, but he's Brazilian. But they're bringing in some of the other higher level guys, the ex-UFC fighters and stuff like that. And so I think they're trying to lean on the American crowd and get that more worldwide crowd to watch it. And if some fans are not used to it, they find distasteful. So I think they're trying to make it more appropriate for everyone's taste.
Well, yeah, it's definitely getting a lot more views now. Like people like Demetrius Johnson and Eddie Alvarez all went over there, from the UFC. A lot more people are watching it, and you're right. A lot of the people are complaining about how it's too violent. People complain about bare knuckle boxing is too violent, but obviously we'll go into that. And and then people just need to understand, it's a sport. These people are competing. They're professionals. They're being protected by a referee. It's the ongoing argument.
There's always going to be that back and forth argument about. At the end of the day, it's a fight, and I think there's a rule set for a reason. And if the rule states that you can do it, then of course the fighters are going to do it. Like if you watch my fight against Kaminchi, I don't know if you noticed, but the first time I passed his guard and I soccer kicked him in the head, and I saw he was unconscious, and then I was just about to make the second kick, and I stopped it like 2 inches from his head, and I didn't follow through because he was already unconscious.
Yeah.
And the referee said to me, "Thank you for not making that kick. We would have had our first fatality." And I said, "No, it's not. It's just to win the fight. It's not personal." And that's what the fans have to understand as well. If the rule set says we can soccer kick, or we can knee the head, or we can elbow, or like you said, bare knuckle boxing, or whatever it may be, we're fighters. We're going to play to that rule set because that's what we both agreed to do in our contracts, and that's what we're all trained to do. We don't want anyone to get seriously hurt. I mean, that affects not just the opponent and the families, but that affects the sport in general and damages it. We don't want that. We lose sponsors, we lose money. Somebody gets severely hurt, which is it's not personal. This is just a business, and no one wants. We just play to the rule set we're given, and that's our job. And that's the end of it. And it's not. I think sometimes fans that see soccer kicks and stuff that are turned off by it, they relate it to like the street fight or a bar fight or something that's horrific with no rule set, and that's not the case. But I understand it's very natural to feel that way, and so they should, because I mean, to be honest, if you think about it, fighting itself is probably it's not natural, right? Even though people like to watch it, 98% of the population do everything to get away from it, to not be put in that situation, and any confrontation, they'll back down from it. They don't want to fight. So it's very natural to see a big percentage of the population be nervous about watching that style of aggression or violence. So it's very natural. So I understand.
And and you're completely right. It's a good way to put it. But so with this whole elbows being not allowed or whatever, down opponents with the head kicks, do you think it might anything to do with the current ruling we've got in MMA now, the 12-6 elbow? Like the point of the elbow and all that. Maybe that had something to do with it as well?
Well, I understand the 12-6 because that down point elbow, basically it came from people that watch karate. Mm-hmm. They were watching people break blocks and bricks and slates with a down 12-6 elbow. So they were saying if enough blunt force was to create it for that to break, a concrete block, for example, or a big lump of wood, what would that do to the spine or the top of the head? Impacting down. So I understand the 12-6 to a degree because it's not a surface damaged elbow. It's more of an internal damage. There's a chance there where it's going to push if you elbowed on top of the head, it could push the spine low and compress the vertebrae and all these kind of other issues it can create, and also deep internal to the brain. So I understand that to a degree because it's a vicious elbow. Other elbows, I think normal elbows, it's surface. It's about making cuts. If it's an elbow, that it's just going to cut the person. And that's why K1 got created, because they took Muay Thai, they took the clinching away from it, they took the elbows away from it, because not always the best person won technically. If someone you could be beating the guy to pieces for 3 rounds, you took a bad elbow, and then of course the fight was stopped for a cut. So it was leaving a lot of people unhappy about the decisions of who was the best kickboxer in the world or the best Muay Thai fighter in the world. So that's why K1 got designed and created years ago, back in 1990. Because they were unhappy. Yeah, they were unhappy with elbows. When K1 first got created, they wanted to find out what was the very best stand-up martial art in the world, and they all had the letter K: Taekwondo, karate. The list went on, and so they created K1. People of the spectators that wasn't overly educated about striking didn't like clinching, because they felt like when people first saw MMA, they thought jiu-jitsu was, 2 guys just hugging each other on the floor, right? So that's why people were frowning upon MMA when it first came around. Same in kickboxing when K1 was designed. People would just frown upon Muay Thai and say, they're just hugging each other, it's boring, they're hugging each other, it's just boring. So then K1 got created by Ishii, the K1 director, and he created K1, and that's why they said no elbows, because they didn't want people to get cut and just pull a decision win out of a stoppage, and they didn't want clinching. So K1 first come around, there was no clinching whatsoever. Then, so you saw everyone was dominating. And then they changed the rules and they said clinch and 1 knee upon impact. So when your hand touched the back of the head, the knee must land exactly the same time. So that allowed then a small degree of clinching. And then now it's changed again, where you can clinch, make 1 knee, but you must break straight away. Yeah. So it's evolved over time, and it's evolved with people's education. So people have started to realize watching K1 that, and kickboxing now has become so big, and Muay Thai has become much more big because of MMA. The people's knowledge for the sport has obviously gone up. So now people don't mind seeing a little bit of clinching, as long as it's just not a pure clinch battle. So that's how martial arts has evolved over the years, and I think MMA took a massive help in that. And that's why I think bare knuckle boxing now has become so fashionable or become so popular, because bare knuckle boxing 20 years ago was highly illegal and banned. It was only taking places, in garages or underground,
and YouTube and stuff like that. Backyard stuff.
YouTube didn't exist 20 years ago, my friend.
Of course.
So,
of course.
So it was only happening when, people had a real problem and they would meet somewhere to have a straightener and get this shit sorted out. And that's where, but now because of the education that MMA's brought in and opened up so many varieties, now they're seeing people boxing with small gloves. Don't forget, when MMA first came around, it was very, very frowned upon as well, because people were used to boxing with big gloves.
Yeah.
So they saw these tiny little fingerless gloves, and it was like one step closer to the real thing. When now people got used to that, and it's now the fastest growing sport in the world. Sponsors are on board, worldwide television. Even people that don't like fights watch MMA. So now it's more acceptable to do bare knuckle boxing, because now it's pushing towards that even more extreme yet again. So that's why I think now it's been made legal and it's been made more acceptable. Because if you'd have done bare knuckle boxing 10 years ago, it would have been shut down off the bat. They wouldn't have made it onto TV whatsoever.
No, it just got seen as brutality and all this sort of stuff. But that's exactly what they thought about UFC when it came out.
Exactly, but what I mean is because of that transition that MMA has done, it's made K1 more appropriate to watch. Now Glory is doing really well. Yeah. You had to be a real martial arts enthusiast to know what K1 even was, to watch it in Japan for all those years. Normal people weren't watching that kind of stuff. It was on at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on satellite TV that nobody really had back then 15 years ago. So you had to be a real enthusiast of martial arts to know what K1 even was. Where now K1 is very popular and everyone knows about it. Martial arts, MMA has been very popular. Look how many shows there are now in the world compared to where there was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There was only a couple. Pride, there was UFC, WEC, Strikeforce. That was about it. You know what I mean? Whereas now you've got Bellator, you've got ONE FC, you've got so many big companies out there, KSW. They're all coming through because they've opened their eyes to the everyday public.
No, and because of the popularity and you said the excitement of it, it's just making everything. And what I like about it as well is that more people are watching it now because of this, and it's nice to have more educated conversations with people about martial arts now, which is nice because before you go in a pub and talk about martial arts and they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You know, so,
or they would just be the old, some old timer there that used to do a bit of boxing back in the day and just,
yeah,
put it down and say, that's a load, that's a load of shit, and that's not real fighting, and this is this. You couldn't be 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you couldn't be a boxing fan and a martial arts fan. You had to choose your side. There was a battle between the two, and that's why I think when McGregor fought Mayweather, forget about the outcome. That was a clear standpoint that brought a lot of boxers into the MMA world, fans, the old timers, and it brought a lot of martial arts fans into the boxing world.
yeah.
Not that boxing world needed it, but it was just a good transition to show, hey, you can support both here. You don't have to be one or the other. And I think that did really good for both aspects of the sports.
I know, and what I like about that is because boxing, as you know, in the UK is our bread and butter in the UK, and the Americans made their bread and butter is wrestling. With MMA being introduced more, we're able to adapt now better. So we've got so many more better wrestlers coming out of the UK now, which is such a huge influence, which is great.
I think if you look at MMA, I think the three biggest successful countries to do MMA is America, England, and Brazil, right? So you've got boxing and striking from England, which they've come over to. We've adapted and we picked up jiu-jitsu pretty quick, but wrestling was always a problem that England had because we didn't have it in high school or whatever like the Americans. And then, of course, the Americans had a problem with striking. They weren't ever the level of ours. And then jiu-jitsu, of course, is from Brazil. Brazil adapted far easier to wrestling than they did striking, but of course they have a great background in jiu-jitsu. So now it's all blended. Now you've got some of the best strikers in the world in Brazil and in America, and then vice versa. Some amazing grapplers in England, as wrestlers in England as well. So it's the whole world has evolved because of it. So it's fantastic.
No, it's great, and as well as in more recent times as well, as well as a lot of people don't maybe not like the guy much or dislike or like whenever, the McGregor era, like you were talking about a second ago with the Mayweather thing, just the whole McGregor thing just made the sport just explode overnight, sort of thing.
Well, that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, we've always had. That's what I think fans have a problem with, is that they're very passionate and they take it very personal, which is fantastic. Yeah. But I mean, we've had it. Let's go back to British boxing. People could never stand Chris Eubank, but they fell in love with Nigel Benn and people like that, and Frank Bruno. But then they couldn't stand Lennox Lewis, even though he was English but Canadian. So there's always been. But the fact of the matter is, the fans don't even know them. Do you know what I mean? The same as Conor McGregor. They don't know him. They don't. They only know what he allows them to know. They only know the persona that he allows to portray, and that's all well and good, So to say they don't like somebody, I think that's okay, but you don't know the person. Yeah. For me, people ask me all the time, "What do you think about this guy?" "Oh, he's a piece of shit." And I say, "Well, actually, you don't know him. When did you meet? When did you meet him?" And I saw him at the thing. I said, "Yeah, but when did you go around his house and sit there with him and his family? Because that's when you really know somebody." You know what I mean? You know the character, you know the personality on TV, and that's why I never took it personal about anyone who said they didn't like me and when I fought, or if I won a fight and I got abuse on social media. "Oh, I hate this happens." I never really give a shit, because to be honest, if you love me or you hate me, I don't give a fuck. The point of the matter is you bought tickets. You come to watch me lose or you come to watch me win. The price is the same, right? my value as an athlete is the same to promoter, whether someone likes me or they hate me. You know what I mean? If they come to see Chris Eubank lose against Nigel Benn, they still bought the same seat as the person that bought the ticket to watch Nigel Benn win and Chris Eubank lose. It's the same price. So it doesn't really matter. But it's the same as soccer and other sports and so forth. It's all about your own personal taste. That's fine. I just never took it that personal where I had a distaste for other athletes or people that I saw on TV, because I didn't really know them, and it's funny, you always see, I know some high level fighters pretty well, and I've been friends with them, or I've trained them, or I know them personally, and you always see someone who's very good at something. People almost think that he's the best thing since sliced bread. He's a great guy. Actually, he's a piece of shit. I know the guy. He's really a dick. But, but because they see greatness in something they do, they always automatically believe that they must be the most the most best personality, nicest family guy in the world, but it's not always the case.
No, and some of these guys are obviously playing up as well because they know how to make money and sell tickets. Colby Covington's a perfect example of it. He's probably the nicest guy going.
That's the way the sport's gone. I mean, it goes back.
Shame.
It goes back many years. I think then my problem with it, I never minded it before, but I feel like now it's gone to a new level. I'm glad. Well, I'm not glad really because I hate being an older guy in the sport now. But I'm glad I'm not a young kid coming through the sport now because the direction it's going is distasteful for me. I don't like it's just got too personal. Like the old Muhammad Ali days, and everyone goes back to these times where he was talking trash or whatever. But it was done in a way of real intelligence, and it was done in a way where he was doing it to just get over the mental aspect of the opponent, trying to break the opponent down mentally and making him believe that he was better than he was or whatever he may want to do. Whereas now it's got very personal. Now people are talking about wives and kids and money and all this kind of stuff, and it's just got too personal. And I think that when you cross that line, there's no going back. And I don't know Colby personally whatsoever. I think as an athlete, he's absolutely fantastic. He's an amazing fighter. I think some things he said a little bit too far. I wouldn't say it, but hey, I'm no one to judge him. I don't care. It doesn't really matter to me. But there's just, I don't know, there's a few now that have coming through that are trying to copy or use the blueprint of others, but they're doing it in a distasteful manner. And I just think once it goes personal like that, it takes. You think about martial arts is always meant to be about respect, right? And I'm sure there's times where I haven't always respected my opponent and he's pissed me off. Or there's only a couple of guys that I could say out of all of these fights I've ever had that I personally didn't like them, and there's only a couple that I say, I really wanted to fight him back. The rest was just a plastic cover for business. But there was a couple that I really had distaste for. But I mean, that's just human nature. I mean, I fought over 200 people, so to have a couple, that's only like, that's 1%. It's under 1%, right? It's 0.005%. So it's very small. So when they go that distastefulness or that personal wise, I think it just creates a whole new level. And I'm just not a fan of it.
No, and I just don't like how people nowadays, I feel some people aren't getting matchmates properly. You can get a fight on nowadays. It's called getting fights on social media. If you give someone enough shit on social media nowadays, you tend to talk your way into a fight.
Yeah, but this is the problem. This is the problem that's happening. It's like, when the fuck did social media run the? I know social media now apparently runs the world. It's like, but when the fuck did that transition happen? I was doing this shit before internet was even existed. I was doing this before social media existed. Like nowadays, you can't have a training session unless the guy's posted it on social media. He didn't even fucking train. You know what I mean? So that's what makes me die, is that these guys are doing this shit, matching people on social media to fight when either they have no background or any business even doing this. And okay, if two people want to fight, who am I to judge? But the problem is the backlash of that. If someone gets seriously hurt, it doesn't affect social media. It affects the martial arts. It affects your job as a media outlet. It affects my job as a fighter. It affects my sponsors. They don't want to be involved in this kind of sport because someone just got hurt. But they shouldn't have been doing it in the fucking first place. They had no right to be there. You know what I mean? It's not like, two idiots got into a fight. It's, two idiots had an MMA fight. And that's not how it should be. And that's not how it should be portrayed. That's where the damage is done, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what makes the sport, they try to say, as inverted commas, bloodthirsty, they say. So what would be what would be your message, though? Do you know what I mean? To, say a younger generation, like 16-year-olds starting to MMA, what would be the sort of first message you give him, that or her? I've had several gyms over the years, but I've just bought a new gym just recently, a month ago, and I opened it in Dallas, Texas. Nice. And I'm there every day, and I've got some young fighters now, actually, that are coming through, and we were just sitting around having a chat the other day, and one is already a professional, and two of the other two are amateur turning professional. And they asked me a similar question, like, if you had your time again, coach, what's the best advice you would give me? And I'd just say, the fact is, you got to do what's best for you. You got to train and push yourself to your limit. Don't get caught up in all the other bullshit. To be honest, even myself, when I first come to America,
You know, I was like, oh, wow, I'm in America, this dream, all this social media was coming through. And it all goes to your head. And I made some mistakes, and my ego got the better of me. And I left gyms that I shouldn't have left, and I stayed at gyms that I should have left. Do you know what I mean? Because I was hanging around with people that I shouldn't have hung around with, because, to be honest, when I look back now as an older, more experienced person, they were dickheads. You know, they were good people, but because of who they was, I was hanging around with them, you know. And it's like you get caught up in that fake persona world, but when push came to shove, they were you think they're your friends, and they're really not. You can only rely on real people, and I think with social media nowadays, I think in the martial arts world, we're growing a load of insecure, fake people. And that's right. And the world's worst thing you can be as a fighter is an insecure, fake person. Because you can persona you did 20 rounds on the bag, and you did all this sparring, and you did all this. But you can lie to social media as much as you want. But the fact of the matter is, you know what you did. You know the work you really did, and you know the effort you really put in. And what you're portraying is fake. So you can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself. So my advice to my guys is that, you know what, take a backward step from all that stuff. Just put in the hard work, stay humble, learn the craft, give it the time it deserves, and success will come your way. Don't be too eager for something that you're not prepared for.
No, because the last thing you want to do is get yourself in there with someone who is a lot more prepared, a lot more experienced, and you end up either getting as yourself, and like you said, injured, or you're just not having your best start to your career. Mentally, that's not going to do you any favors at all.
No, because when times get tough, and they will get tough at some point,
yeah,
you know you're not going to be able to deliver what you said you could deliver. You haven't put the time in, you haven't put the effort in, and you're more concerned about what people think, more followers you've got, what the comments were, and all this shit, than really actually putting in the hard work, right? And that's really what it boils down to. And listen, I'm not saying like I'm holy and I'm never on social media. I have been on it, and I've got a company that does my social media for me, and I'm happy and very lucky that I've got them, because unfortunately without them at some point, it does help you earn more money. It does help you with sponsors. I just think that in itself is a shame, because when I started this shit, sponsors saw you as an athlete or an up-and-coming fighter or whatever you want to wear. They saw an opportunity where they can get some promotion, and they believed in your potential, and they invested in you. They invested in you, and they supported you financially so you could reach your goal. Sponsors nowadays is just how many likes and fucking followers you have on social media and how much exposure can you get me. It's nothing to do with, do you think this young kid's going to be something one day, and can I give him X amount of money per month to support him so he can reach his potential, and also when he does fight, I'm going to get my promotion, and I'm going to get, but also it's a good tax write-off, and it's also I'm doing something good by someone else. I'm giving back to somebody else. It's nothing to do with that anymore. I'm sure there's a small percentage out there that are investing in young lads. I'm not saying this never happens, but the majority of sponsors that I see out there now, I've got a young kid said to me the other day, he said, Coach, I've got this fight come up, but the promoter told me I can only have $500. He says, but I've had 5 more fights than my opponent, and he's given him $1,000. And I said, how does that work? He said, because he's got 5,000 more followers than me on social media, on Instagram. I said, are you fucking serious? He said, yes, Coach, look, he showed me the email. The promoter said to him, your opponent, even though he has less fights, has 5,000 more followers on Instagram, so he gets 1,000 and you get $500. Can you believe that?
What a joke. I've never heard of that.
His Instagram followers counted more than 5 extra fights to the opponent. And I said to the kid, I said, listen, pull out. Don't even take the fight. Don't even bother. And he said, what? I said, don't do it. Don't take the fight. Because if you take the fight, you're supporting promoters like this, and you're going to support their method of thought process. And you cannot do that. Even if you go out there and you fight and you get paid your money, whatever, you're making him a success. And people that have that mentality don't deserve to be in this sport. and he pulled out. He didn't take the fight. He didn't take it, and that's just goes to show you very. Yeah, I'm very glad he's a good kid, but I'm just it just goes to show you the mentality that's out there, unfortunately nowadays, towards that kind of stuff. It's a shame.
It is a shame, mate. It is, but unfortunately, as you said, it is the way the world's going. And I said I'm from the days of watching Pride and everything as well. Like, I remember having to, as you said, this was when we actually had internet to stream stuff, and before MMA was even shown on UK TV, or you might have been lucky to get it on Bravo and stuff like that, back in the day. But as you said, it's amazing how it's evolved, and it's amazing how many more countries it's becoming legal in, like France at the end of the year, which is great. And now we've got MMA we've got shows on now with K1 and MMA fights on the same card. Bellator are doing it, so that's great, isn't it? How it's mixing together.
It's fantastic. That's what really martial arts should be about, in my opinion.
Like, I went to an event it's a very local event in the UK called Fusion Fighting Championship, which I covered as just a little press for them, and they had all the way from like submission grappling to gi jiu-jitsu, no gi jiu-jitsu, MMA and K1 at amateur and pro level, and it's just such a great evening to sit there and watch all these different disciplines,
Yeah, but that's the thing is, if you're a martial arts enthusiast, which obviously you are, I mean, why would you not want to see martial arts across the board? You do. So it's fantastic to go out for an evening and enjoy a night of martial arts, even though MMA is martial arts, Thai boxing is martial arts, boxing, whatever, and it's great to watch a different style, because it is like, oh wow, okay, these guys are going to come out and do this in a moment. Oh, that's great. I haven't seen, and you get to experience that yet again, and that's fantastic. I fought on a show in Germany called Mixed Fight. They have boxing, they have bare knuckle Thai boxing on the event, and they have K1. So they really do a whole literally mixed fight. They actually put on. I mean, if you remember back in the day, it was called free fights. MMA was called Free Fight, and then they brought it on to Mixed Fight. So now this company is called Mixed Fight, and they just put on all different style of fights on the card. They have 10 or 12 different fights on that card, and they have different fights, different styles. It's great. It's a great night of fights. I'm all for it.
That's why I love that, and this is in the UK, by the way, because if you didn't know, loads of this is happening in the UK at the moment. We've got so many guys, so many British Open championships now for jiu-jitsu in the UK and everything. It's great. So many guys now are actually coming through the MMA gyms, and obviously they're learning MMA as a whole now, opposed to just individual disciplines. And they're coming through better jiu-jitsu guys, grappling guys, and strikers, which is obviously the opposite of 20 odd years ago.
Well, I'm still a fan of traditional martial arts. I still love to see a Thai boxing event. I still like to see an MMA event, but I just don't. It's not necessary just have this only. I'm just glad the mentality is changing, where people open up their boundaries to what they perceive. Martial arts is martial arts across the board.
Yeah,
and I'm glad there's events that are doing it. One championship's doing it. They're having K1 fights. They got Mixed Fight in Germany. They're doing it. Shows in England doing it. It's fantastic. It's how it should be. And I'm all for it. I'm happy for them.
And it sounds like, and people like Bellator as well, they've got like a kickboxing division in their organisation.
Yep,
like in Italy, they'll have some
it's a very strong division as well. There's a lot of good fighters in it too. A lot.
And that's it. And it'd be nice to see, because Bellator is just as big, people say now, as the UFC. Because I see UFC maybe start to introduce something like that as well.
No, I don't think they will. I don't think they ever will. But I know the reasons probably why, but I see it, but it's just not necessary. But I just don't think they will, because I think UFC is always, not just that, but they've always just I've spoke to Dana personally, and the Fertitas when they was involved in the UFC as well, and they've always set the standard in the fact of, if we do something, we do it first. Like, do you know how many fighters have tried to get into boxing? Like Anderson Silva was meant to fight. What was his name? Something Junior. What's it? I'm terrible. His name's Junior. Middleweight, one of the best middleweights of the world. He was going to fight Roy Jones Jr. Anderson Silva was trying to set that fight up. The UFC would never have it. There was a few people trying to get into boxing when they were under the UFC standard. They never allowed. They only wanted MMA, and they didn't want to ever cross promotion. As soon as the UFC or the Fertitas sold the UFC to China, they allowed Conor to fight Mayweather, right? That fight would have never happened if it was under Fertitta's banner. They would never have allowed it. And I understand why they wouldn't allow it as well, because they just wanted MMA, and it would have damaged, or the possibility of damaging or whatever, in their opinion. They always want to be first in what they do. And I get it. I understand. I love the fact that other promotions are doing it as well, but I don't think the UFC will ever do it.
No, and I'm not going to argue with the Fertittas. They did something pretty incredible in the 20 years they had the company.
Yeah, between them and Dana, they did it. They did a very well. People can say what they want about Dana and the UFC and all the rest of it, but usually it's because of hard eggs, like they've fought for them and then they've got fired or they had to leave or whatever reason it is, and they talk shit about them. But I can't say that Dana's only ever been very good to me. Even since I saw him after my stint in the UFC, I just recently saw him out in Thailand and had a chat with him, went out for dinner with him, and he's been nothing but a gentleman to me and always been good to me and my family. So I understand his job and I understand the way he does it. Some people, I think, take it more personally or think that he's their friend, and then that's when they get bit. But I never saw it that way.
No, well, you can't complain. Like the Fertittas openly stated, like they took a step when they brought Dana White on. They said, "Look, we're going to bring you on with us. We're going to step back, and we want you to run the show." And look what he's done. And it's pretty obvious why the new owners have kept him on as the lead man. If you lose Dana White, you know what I mean? What's going to happen? That's the big question that a lot of people say, don't they?
The fact is, if they did do it, it would be a risk. Whether they would lose it all or not, it's a risk. And to be honest, when you bought a company for X amount of $1 billion, it's not worth that risk, is it?
No, definitely not.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So just keep it as it is for now.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, I can't say if I like or hate him. I like him as I see him. Obviously, I haven't met him, but from what you're saying, he sounds like a decent bloke. And he was a boxing promoter himself, as most people know. And he came over to the sport and really followed it through. And you've got to love the bloke, really. When he sees something he wants, they definitely did. They did the right thing. And with the Ultimate Fighter series as well, which I'm sure you feel quite lucky to be a part of, that just really created the sport well. Like, how did that feel for you going into the Ultimate Fighter? Like, how did that all come around?
I was training in England, and I'd fought a guy called Roman Webber in London for Cage Rage, and I had a fast knockout. I think it was like 11 seconds or something, and so it was on a lot of TV around the world, and it was like it was a jumping knee and stuff like that. To see a heavyweight do that, it got a lot of publicity in the MMA world. And then I was training at a gym, and I just got a phone call, and it was Greg Jackson. And I thought it was a joke at first. I thought someone was messing with me, and he just invited me to come out to Albuquerque. And it was a friend of a friend contacted me and said, you should go out to Jackson's, blah blah. And then Greg contacted me and invited me out. And Rashad was preparing to fight Forrest Griffin for the world light heavyweight champ title. So then he asked me my size and so forth, and I said, I'm 6'4". I was like 220 pounds back then. And he said, that's perfect. You're the same size as Forrest. You'll be a sparring partner for Rashad. So I was like, okay, great. So I went out there, and then within a week of helping them spar and stuff, Rashad asked me to help him with his striking, and I was brought on, and we became friends. And I was a part of the whole training camp, and I cornered him for the fight against Forrest. And, of course, he won the fight and won the belt. And it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, I was preparing to go home, and I got a phone call from Joe Silva and said to me there was this show coming up called The Ultimate Fighter, and did I want to be on it? And I never knew anything about it. I'd only been doing MMA for about a year or something. I had no jiu-jitsu experience. Like, I thought I had a couple of months, but looking back to what I know now as a black belt, I knew nothing. And he said, Rashad's going to be one of the coaches. I know you and Rashad are friends. If you pass the medical, you don't have to try out. You're just on. And I was like, okay, well, fuck it. Okay, I'll do it. So then I called Rashad and said, what's this Ultimate Fighter thing? He said, I'm going to be one of the coaches. You should try and get on it. I said, well, Joe just called me and offered me a spot. And he's like, fantastic. Yes, me and Rampage. He explained it to me. And, 16 of the fighters upcoming in the world are going to go into this house and blah, blah. And I was like, this sounds fucking terrible. I don't even want to do this. And I remember calling back to my family, like, I'm not doing this. I'm not staying in the house with fucking
big
15 guys and a fucking camera. You're joking. And then, of course, once I got talking to everyone, I saw the opportunity in it. And to be honest, I never really thought I deserved to be there. I said, look, I haven't done MMA long enough. These guys have been doing it. They've all got these records. So when I got the chance to go in there, I just really went in there with my balls really, and just a personality and my ego and my own aspect to fight. So I think that's why, looking back when I was on there, I didn't take no shit from anybody. I didn't want to show any weakness because I wasn't an MMA fighter. In my opinion, I was a striker. And so when I was sparring with people, I was really giving them a hard time because I thought, fuck, if I have to fight this guy on this show, I want him to already think that I'm better than I am, or I'm better than him, So I was training hard as I could, and even in the house, I didn't take much shit from anybody on the house, and I'd always stuck out like a sore thumb, being the only non-American. Everyone else was American. I'm the only guy that was English, and so I already stuck out. And I was very fortunate.
At least they didn't subtitle you like Bisping.
Actually, they did. I think the show started off and I had no subtitles, but towards the end I was covered in them. So,
did it?
The bastards. I don't know if I got more mumbly as I went on, but I was very lucky. I went through. I won a couple of fights on there. I lost to Roy Nelson, which,
man,
to
you
be honest,
Matt Mitrione, man.
Which was a bit of a fuck up. It was my own problem, even myself. It was my own ego to lose to Roy, because, to be honest, in the house training, I used to beat the shit out of Roy a lot in training. I really didn't know who Roy Nelson even was. And I didn't really have much respect for him as an athlete in the house. I knew he was very good at jiu-jitsu and so forth. And I knew he was a tough guy, but I wasn't really that worried about it. So when they gave me the fight against him, I thought, I'm going to light this guy up. Like, I'm in the final. This is nothing. And then stupid me, I didn't take the fight overly serious, and I showboated a little bit, and I got caught. He took me down and crucifixed and took me out. But I still got through to the final, and I still got my contract. So it worked out okay, and it was a massive introduction. I mean, it was the most popular show, I think, to this day to ever go on Spike TV for Ultimate Fighter shows. So Series 10 was the most popular season. All the characters that we had on there and so forth. So it was a great experience, and it really lit me up in America and let everyone know who I was. And even to this day, I still get people recognize me and talk to me about the Ultimate Fighter show. So that's quite funny.
Yeah, man, that's like such a quality. Like, especially back then, the Ultimate Fighter was a lot more popular. Like, they haven't had one for a while now, But Dana White has said they are bringing it back again. But they got them everywhere. Ultimate Fighter Brazil, Ultimate Fighter Philippines, I think even one was, and something like that. So they're everywhere now. And I'm sure for yourself, it's nice to be part of something like that, especially one of the most watched ones, seeing how far it's come.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky, and I do feel that a part of MMA history there, being a part of the show, and it led to good things to me. And of course, I still live in America, and it was just a great way for me to get introduced into the UFC and so forth. It's just, if I had my time again, I didn't know enough about MMA at the time. Like, if it was to happen now, being much more experienced in MMA and much more experienced in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and so forth, it'd be a much different story. But back then, it was what it was. I was just a young kid from London or outside London, just fighting my way, trying to get somewhere in the world. You know what I mean? So it was just opportunity came, and I jumped at it.
No, that's it, man. That's it, and that's exactly what you got to do. Said, if the UFC call up, the answer is yes, not I'll think about it, as you said. So no, fair play to you, and you've definitely made your name on the scene, and in the UK, you're one of our first. Like one of the first main ones to really go in there, because we haven't got too many anymore. They're all retiring at the moment. So you're definitely being remembered.
I'm still fighting, so I've got 4 fights by the end of the year this year. So I've got a busy 4 months ahead of me. I'm pretty much fighting almost every month from September onwards. As you guys know, I'm fighting September 21st in the Bare Knuckle for Ken Shamrock in America.
How does that feel, by the way, for Ken Shamrock, the pioneer of the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, everyone thinks of Ken, but I always remember him from the original UFC days where there was no gloves and so forth, which is, I think, kind of cool.
When he wore shoes as well.
Yeah, which is kind of cool now that he's gone into the bare knuckle boxing world with Valor, his new show, his new promotion, because it just kind of, you think of Ken Shamrock, you think of the bare knuckle days and Royce Gracie and them guys, and they really paved the way for everybody, So to be a part of that, and also another new company coming to America, I'm excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, I bet. And he's been there and done it. Old Ken Shamrock. So he obviously appreciates everything that you guys are doing, and he knows exactly what you're going through. Between every fight. So he knows. I'm sure he'll look after you well. I'm not saying other promoters don't, but he's obviously got a lot of experience in that department. So I'm sure it's great to have him on board. And he was active not that long ago, so he's still getting there.
Listen, I think about Ken, I think he's always going to be that guy that no matter how old he is, if you piss him off, I think he's going to still want to fight you. He's not going to take. He's got a temper, and he's very passionate about what he does. I had opportunity to talk to him about a month or so ago when I first got the phone call, the message to get involved with them. Me and Ken spoke on the phone, and we actually fought on the same show in England years ago in Cage Rage. So I knew him from back then as well. We have some mutual friends like Alistair Overeem and stuff like that, mutual friends of ours, and so we've been around each other. So we had just a general chat, and it was all guns blazing once we had a chance to talk on the phone about moving forward with the show, having me on, and I got a great feeling straight away that he was looking after the fight as well, because as you said, he's been there and done it. He knows the feelings. He knows how fighters should be treated. And I think a lot of promoters out there do know how fighters should be treated, and some treat you right and some don't always treat you how they should. Do you know what I mean? They say they're going to do the right thing. They don't always do the right thing. At the end of the day, they're always going to look after themselves first, which is understandable, but it doesn't mean the fighter should be last. It just means they should be, just below the first place. I understand people looking after themselves first because that's business, and you've always got to look after yourself first. Just as the fighter needs a promoter needs a fighter. But it's just sometimes because people out there now will sell their souls to the devil just to go out there to fight, or to say they want to be a part of something, or to say they're on a poster or whatever. They'll undercut themselves by a huge amount. They don't value themselves. Therefore, that makes everyone else's value come down, right? I mean, if you look at the old numbers, even some UFC fighters out there, there's some guys fighting for $2,000 or $3,000. High level shows. High level shows.
That's crazy.
I haven't earned that in 20 years. So it's, and that's when no one knew about the sport. So, but the fact is, because there's promoters out there that just don't give a shit what kind of fighter they have, they just have any fighter to be on the card. If you go out there and say, yeah, I want X amount of figures, and they say, well, no way, that's not in our budget. It's in their budget. It's just they know there's some punk around the corner that will just do it for $500.
Yeah, that's the problem, because so many people out there just. He's probably got 10,000 more likes on Facebook, so he'd probably get more money.
Well, there you go. Just that on itself, that fucking stupidity of mentality itself, goes to show you out there about some people. I've been very fortunate. I fought some of the biggest promotions in the world, from 1FC, the KSW, and listen, it's never always smooth. Like, you know what I mean? But I've got to be honest. I've experienced a lot with a lot of different promotions. There's no one out there that's ever really done me really bad. There's no one out there that's ever really fucked me over in the promotional world. There isn't. But I know, I hear stories. I've seen it happen, and I know it goes on. But I think if you leave room for error and you leave people the room to fuck you over, then you know what? Sometimes it happens. So for me, I try not to leave as little wiggle room as possible, and all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and I do what I can do. And also, like just recently, I was offered a fight in Croatia 3 weeks ago. Would I take a fight on a week's notice against the K1 champion of Croatia? I said yes, no problem.
I'm joking.
No, I said yes, no problem. And they said, okay, well, how much do you want? And I told them my price, and they said, well, we're not going to pay that. And I said, okay. And then they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, I just told you.
That's how much I want, exactly.
We're not going to. I said, it's not negotiable. I'm just saying to you, for me to take a high level fight against this guy, I'm coming to win. You're calling me because you think that maybe I'm going to put on a good fight or whatever. But I'm telling you, I'm going to come and knock the guy out. I'm going to beat the guy. I know him, and I'm always in shape. I train every day, twice a day. I don't take days off. I'm coming. But this is how much I want. This is how much I deserve. This is what I warrant. This is how much my worth is. If you don't see that, then no problem. Don't call me. I never called you. You call, but because they're so used to people saying, okay, I want X amount. And the guy says, no, I'm not paying that. Okay, give me Y amount. I'm not paying that. Okay, well, give you W amount. No, I'm not paying. They got them down to A, B's, and C's by the end of the conversation. I've just never done that. This is how much I'm worth. And if you don't want to pay it, then don't pay it. And that's just how I've always been. So I don't allow myself to get ripped off in that respect or not paid what I feel I deserve, or I know what I bring to the table. So in my opinion, I know what my worth is, and I won't take second. I'm not that desperate for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the mentality, as you said. Hope people listen to this, and as you feed back to people, that's the mentality you need to be having. And that is the way you'll become the best you can. That's the way you'll fight over 200 fights, and keep going, keep training, keep feeling great. You know what I mean? And I think you're a prime example.
I just think for myself is that I've had a lot of fights, and I have, I've been around the world, and it's all fantastic and great. But the reason why I've had a lot of fights is because I deliver what I'm saying I'm going to deliver. A lot of people like to have me on their shows, or when I come, I do talk the fight, I do sell the fight, I do deliver the fight. Whether I won, lost, or drawed, I've had a war out there. I've always brought the fight like I was out there to win. And so I know what I'm worth. I know what I bring to the table, and I just won't take having over 200 fights. It's not like that hasn't worked for me. So it's worked for me. If my value is X amount, I deserve X, and that's it. I'm not going to do it for Y, Z, or anything else. I'm going to do it for what what I deserve, in my opinion.
Yeah, and why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't you ask what you deserve? And good for you, mate. Good for you, staying your ground, obviously not folding, because the more people fold, the more they're going to do it. You know what I mean? So that's it. So if they think they can do it, if the problem is if people are folding, like you said, there's someone around the corner that will do it for a cheaper price.
Well, put it this way: I've never said I want 10 grand and someone's offered me 20. Do you know what I mean? That's never happened. So at the end of the day, if you know how much you're worth, you're going to get it eventually, or you're not. Then you know what? Then that's the day that I walk away from the sport, because this is a very expensive sport. It's a very toxic sport. It puts a lot of pressure on me, my family, and training camps are not cheap. And I know what my worth is. And if I don't get it, and I can't get it anymore, then it's the day that I say, okay, then it's time to walk away. But so far, I'm nowhere near that. Like as I said, I fought once already this year. I've got 4 fights by the end of the year. That's 5 fights this year. I've been pretty much having 5 fights every year for the last 8 or 9 years. So I'm not short of fights, and hopefully everyone's always happy when they've had me on. They've always brought me back, so I'm very fortunate.
Hey man, Randy Couture retired at what, 47, 48, 49, I think it
was?
Yeah,
I won't be 47. I can assure you that. I'm 38 right now. I reckon I've got a good another 3 or 4 years left in me. I'm healthy. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do any drugs or nothing. I've always been a healthy guy. I train. I love to train. I never put a date on it. I've always just said when I'm not doing the sport justice, so I feel like I don't want to be there, then it's time for me to hang the gloves up and push more into my gyms and more into my fighters. At the moment, I enjoy what I do, and I do want to be there. I'm hungry to fight.
Yeah, man, and we can't wait to keep seeing you fight, mate. And that's the attitude, And people think they have to retire when they do and things, but they really don't. Age is just a number. If you keep training and you keep active and just keep in good shape, like you're saying, there's no reason why you should fall out of shape. You see blooming 70-year-olds doing marathons and stuff nowadays, So it's all a mindset, and obviously you've got the right mindset. But what I want to know is that what put you in the mindset then? Like, so you've been K1, you've done MMA, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So, and what's now brought you into the bare knuckle boxing world? What attracted you to that?
Well, years ago, I'll go even further. When I used to run a security company for years before, while I was subsidizing before I could be a full-time fighter. From the age of about 18 to 23, before I moved to America, I sold my security company. So from about 18 to 24, so like 5-6 years, I was always working security in doors and clubs, and I had a security company. And to subsidize that, I managed just to get into, I was doing bare knuckle boxing illegally back then. There's a bit of a funny story, I guess, on how I got into it, but I ended up knocking a guy out on the door at a club, and pretty much every week these guys come back to fight me again with somebody new and somebody new and somebody new. And I didn't realize, but they were Irish tinkers, gypsies. And I had knocked out one of the head of the family of the boxing, and I didn't realize. And they just kept coming back for me to challenge me to get the name back. Well, after 3 weeks of this happening and me fighting 3 weeks in a row, on the fourth time they turned up with about 5 or 6 friggin' Land Rovers and all the rest of it, I put a stop to it and said, look, what's going on? Like, I'm not going to keep doing this every fucking week. This is ridiculous. And then they explained to me, yes, this is going to keep happening until I go down, until they get their name back and they recall the name. So I said, well, if you guys are all bare knuckle boxers, you must gamble, you must bet on it. And they said, yeah, fuck, we do. So I said, okay, then we'll come into my work. I'll come to you and let's do it real. Let's earn some money. So that's what I started to do. I started to go to different campsites and different places and have bare knuckle fights. And in the old days, they were called straighteners, which was just boxing, or all in, which means obviously all in. You could do anything, headbutt, bite, you could do anything you wanted to do. So I used to always go for the all in because I was a kickboxer, right? So I could headbutt, kick, punch, and do knees and all kinds of elbows and all sorts. So these guys, most of the time, were just security or boxers or little tough guys from the pubs and bars and stuff like that. So they couldn't really hang with us. So I would take some of my friends with me to make sure that, you know, nothing really went bad. And I would fight once or twice a month to just earn some extra few £1,000. And this is 20 years ago. That was a lot of money back then. So whenever we were a little bit short of cash, we'd organize a couple of the guys from me and one of my very good friends, Chris Ballard, who we used to go down there and fight. And we would exchange money. I'd give the bet money to someone I trusted and tell them to leave because I didn't trust that the money wouldn't get out of there. And once I knew they had left and they would call me to say they were home safe, then we would fight. And so I was always involved in that kind of world a little bit. And then I got opportunities to fight in a bare knuckle Muay Thai in Thailand. So I did that and I won a world title in bare knuckle Muay Thai, which isn't really bare knuckle. You fight in the old days with like this rope on your hands. Yeah. So I'll become a world champion in bare knuckle Muay Thai. And then, of course, I got more into K1 and it got more legal and I could actually subsidize my training by not doing it. There was something quite horrific happened in one of the bare knuckle fights. Someone got really badly hurt. And when we all left, even one of my friends said to me, like, we ain't doing that again, are we? And I was like, nah, it's time to just step away from it. It's just getting too much, you know. And it was very dangerous back then. You know, you never knew. They pulled guns on us and all kinds of stuff at certain times. And, you know, they were betting a lot of money back then. So there was a lot of money exchanging taking place. So it was quite a dangerous world. So I got away from it and I concentrated back on my professional career. Fortunately, of course, I started to take off as a professional fighter and I didn't need to do it anymore. So it's kind of come not full circle, but I was already very comfortable with bare knuckle fighting. I've always still trained bare knuckle at certain times because I've always believed if you can punch bare knuckle hard, you can punch hard with gloves on, because sometimes people have bad technique with the gloves because the gloves are so padded and protective of their hands. Whereas bare knuckle, you can't make that mistake. You've got to be very accurate with those two front knuckles, and you've got to be very penetrative with those knuckles. So I've still always trained bare knuckle, and of course with martial arts, being an enthusiast, I've learned how to do breaks and stuff like that through breaking blocks and wood and all this kind of stuff. So it's always been a part of my training camp. And then, of course, now when bare knuckle went over to England and became now an actual legalized sport, and then it come into America, would be a legalized sport in certain states and so forth. When it's funny because before signing with Valor, I had numerous different companies contact me about stepping in. Would I be interested in doing it? And I said, yes, no problem. Let's start negotiations. And we did. It was getting dragged out a little bit. And then now Valor was the first one to actually meet what I wanted financially. And they were the first ones to put a contract on board. But even with that, they weren't looking to do a multiple fight deal. They said, this is our first show. We're going to do one show at a time. We'll sign a one fight deal. And I said, yes, no problem, because there was another company in England had offered me a fight too. but it wasn't until later in the year or another part of the year or so forth. But it didn't matter. I just was, okay, I'm interested in doing it. Let's have a go. So now Valor has pushed forward and we signed the contract. So I was very excited about doing it. And to be honest, my last K1 fight, I fought Daniel Elonga. Daniel Elonga is ranked number 2 in the world under Glory. And I knocked him out. I knocked him down 2 or 3 times in the fight, and I knocked him out in the 3rd round. Prior to that, I knocked out another K1 champion early part of that year. I know for a fact there's no one of my striking caliber in the bare knuckle world, in the heavyweight division. There's no one that can stand to me whatsoever.
I can't wait, especially after hearing what you were telling me then about all the when you travel around to sites and things like that. I'm not saying you're saying you're overly proud of it, obviously that sort of thing. You earn your money, that's the most important thing. But you would learn a lot.
Nothing that I'm proud of. It's not that I'm proud of it. I'm not proud of it. To be honest, when I look back on my life, there's things I'm not proud of, or I am proud. I have no feelings for whatsoever. Bare knuckle boxing back in those days, I had no feelings towards it whatsoever. It was just something that I needed to do to subsidize my lifestyle. It fed my family and it fed me, and it allowed me to earn money to subsidize my training and my business. So, and sometimes, things went wrong on the door and you had an argument, and rather than get arrested for it, we organized a real straight fight, and then when you saw like Kimbo and stuff like that doing it on YouTube, of course you saw how much popularity it came. And in the back of my mind, I was like, shit, man, we were doing that in the UK. And it was funny because when I was in the Ultimate Fighter House, Kimbo was on the show, and he was one of the people that I honestly thought that I wouldn't like. When he came in and the way he came into the house, they put a massive target on his back. And of course, everyone had seen these fights on YouTube and so forth. And I really didn't want to like him. But when I actually, after a couple of days of being around him, you couldn't help but gravitate towards the guy. He was such a likable, nice character, and so humble and so open to, honest about his abilities and shared stories. He was one of the most likable people on the show. He was such a nice guy. I familiarized with him, and me and him actually got quite close, and I felt that we had a lot of some of the stories that he was telling. I didn't say to anybody because I like, oh yeah, me too. You want to be that kind of guy, right? But there were certain things he would say, and I thought, oh fuck me, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, that's happened to me. So of course he's not here with us anymore. Bless him, and rest in peace. And it's a shame, but now the world's come full circle, and it is apparent. I'm very excited to get in the bare knuckle ring.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good shout out to obviously Kimbo Slice there, rest his soul. You know what I mean? The original backyard brawler of the States, as they say. How many views has that guy got on YouTube? I know that's not the point, but you know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah, but it's not about the views. It's more about the interest in what was happening. Of course. That's what I see in views. So you can talk about the views. It's not about its popularity. It's just about what they were doing. There's people interested in watching it, and that's why it's amazing now that there is these companies out there that have got it, and they're getting millions of views, on pay-per-view, or millions of views after on YouTube and so forth. And that's what athletes deserve. And bare knuckle boxing, boxing has been around for a historic amount of years, and I've always been a boxing enthusiast. My father was a boxing enthusiast. I've watched fights that have gone back into the early 1900s, and I've watched and that's how boxing began. So to see it come back and get a bit of recognition, I think it's fantastic. I'm honoured yet again to be a part of it. I think it's a part of history, and it's always going to be out there. So I'm very excited. I just know, to be honest, that I'm going to bring a level that the heavyweights in the bare knuckle world is not used to. They just think that I'm going to be some kind of kickboxing guy or MMA guy getting into bare knuckle boxing. But I'm undefeated in bare knuckle boxing. I've never lost one, and I've had a lot. And I do mean
those boys aren't soft either that you were fighting.
No, these weren't the most technical, high striking guys in the world. Let's get something straight. But I can tell you now, these guys were tough as fucking nails. These guys were losing teeth, and they weren't stopping. These guys were getting their ears pulled off and headbutt and nose bites and all kinds of stuff on the all-in fights, kicked in the bollocks and kneed and arms broken and still trying to fight. Like, these guys were tough as nails, and I do mean tough. I've seen some of the guys in this. I can't talk about everybody, of course. I'm not here to put everyone down, but I'm just trying to say I've seen some of the fights. I don't know how some of these fights are taking place where they're going the distance. I've never had a bare knuckle fight ever in my life go the distance. How the fuck is there a point scoring thing on this? It's just ridiculous to me. I could name 2 heavyweights right now that have been involved in it, and they went the distance twice. Heavyweight boxers, heavyweight fighters with no gloves go the distance. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's terrible.
Yeah, if you ever want to put a bet on UFC, put a bet on heavyweights going 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So you'll win some money on that.
Yes, because it's so unlikely. Now take their gloves off and imagine Mike Tyson with no gloves on. Would you bet he's going to go the distance? Exactly. Say that again. He'd probably kill someone. Why would he probably kill someone? Because his striking was over the elite level of boxing, right?
Yeah.
Where if he hit you with no gloves, he'd knock you out. Now, if you took a high-level K1 fighter with no gloves, he's the most elite level striker in the world. Right now, as it stands, I'm ranked number 7 in the world in K1. I've been out of K1 for over 10, 15 years, and I'm still ranked number 7. After I knocked out Daniel Ilongo, who's ranked number 3 in the world, and I'd only been back in the sport 6 months after 15 years of being out of K1.
Yeah.
And I knocked out the guy who's number 3. There's no one in this bare knuckle boxing game. I just saw the lineup for the heavyweight thing on Value. There's no one on there that would last a round with me. And it's not saying, oh, I'm this and I'm the best and I'm not. It's just a fact. It's just a fact of level of striking. They won't, and if they would not last. It's not even about me talking through ego. I'm putting me out of it. I'm looking at if I look at your last 2 striking fights against my last 2 striking fights, no betting man in the world would take that fight.
Do you know what? This is going to be absolutely epic. I'm getting hyped up just listening to you. You can definitely sell the fight.
Yeah, but it's not even.
I know that's not what you're trying to do.
I'm talking as it stands. Forget me. Take me out of it and put you in it. And I'm talking about you, who has my striking background, and you performed the way I performed in my last 2 striking fights. And now, if I was looking onto you, I can't say that. I can't say that those guys would beat you. I mean. They got a heavyweight tournament, right? Now we're the reserve fight for the heavyweight tournament. I'm fighting another guy so whoever wins out of me and him, if someone gets hurt between now and the tournament, I'm the one who's going to be stepping in.
Hello, my name's Chris Allen, and this is the Martial Arts Chat podcast. Today I'm being joined by another member of the Valor fight series that's coming up soon, which Ken Shamrock has brought to us all. Mighty Mo, a legend of the sport, well, many sports actually. He's been a kickboxer, an MMA fighter, a boxer, and now it's bare knuckle boxing. So Mo, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, appreciate you guys for having me on.
No, so I really appreciate you coming on. As I know, you're quite a time difference behind us, so it's quite early in the morning. I'm sure you're doing a lot of preparation. So where are you right now? You're at the gym right now, aren't you?
Yes, I'm at the dojo.
So what's sorry.
Yakuza Dojo.
Yakuza Dojo, nice man. Where's that based? Is that in California?
Yes, sir, in San Bernardino, California.
Nice man. So how long have you been training there for?
For about off and on for about a year.
And okay, so what sort of training do you do there? Like, is it more aimed at the MMA world or K1, or is it a mixture of everything?
A mixture of everything, but yeah, a mixture of everything. But when I get ready to spar boxing, and I go to the local gyms, boxing gyms.
Okay, why is that? Do you find you coming up against guys obviously who've been doing boxing more predominantly than the MMA guys? Is that something you just prefer to do?
Well, no, just at the moment that's the opportunity right now for me, and I like to stay busy.
No, that's it. So what have you been up to then recently? I think you had a fight. Your last matchup, competitive matchup, was last December. So what have you been up to between that time?
Just healing up and getting ready for the next fight.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for the next fight. You know, it's going to be interesting, obviously, seeing you in the bare knuckle world. And so, but talking about where you are now in the gym, what training have you got planned for today?
Just about cardio, swimming, and technique. Just going over basic technique of strength and conditioning.
Oh, fair play to you. Yeah. More you than me, sir, to be fair. I'm 32 and I don't think I could go longer than 5 minutes nowadays. So, good for you, sir. And